What's good with the YouTube? You already know. Big Flacco with a conference perspective. And I'm going to smash, dash, and slide on through. Little bit of energy. What's cracking, people? Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, man. Help support the channel. Push this algorithm, man. Let's keep this channel moving forward, man. And so you guys can tell by the title and thumbnail, this is going to be a very interesting topic because we're talking about how the gangs have became so widespread that the Nortenos actually have not just one faction in the city of Dodge City. They actually had two factions out there. And so I did a little bit of research. And so there's basically two gangs out there in Dodge City that are Norteno based. Now, Dodge City, Kansas is population 27,000 people. So it's not really like a huge city. But they have two gangs that are sub-factions that bang Norte out there. One's called Diablos Viejos, the DVs. And the other one is Los Carnales Chingones. Now, they've been involved in a range of different crimes, allegedly, as far back as the last 15 years. So you've had, they got indicted in 2012, 2013, 23 members for murders, conspiracy to distribute product, and so forth, man. And what I was learning about these gangs is they were having weekly meetings and so forth within their groups. They were collecting fees, basically taxes from their own members, right? And they were engaged in a whole long list of different types of criminal activities. Now, their main rivals were Sureños, of course, which you had the masterminds, and another group, 18th Street, which 18th Street is pretty widespread. But this is one area where the Norteños were actually pretty deep in the Midwest. Now, we know about Norteños being in Washington, of course, they're pretty deep. Out there in Idaho, Oregon, and so forth. And then they're kind of spread, little sprinkles here and there. Like Florida has some now, and Georgia, and other locations, right? But here we have Kansas, man. You know what I'm saying? We're not in Kansas anymore, but they're out there pretty deep, man. And see, they were doing a lot more allegedly sophisticated crimes. Like they were kind of organized a little bit. They had a stockpile of weapons. They were also being accused of extorting people who were newly immigrants, like individuals that were coming over from Guatemala. They were coming over to Dodge City because there must be some type of trade work out there that would call for a lot of immigrants in that area, and they were basically extorting them. They were extorting them, they were robbing them, they were engaged in all kinds of different illicit acts. And the reasons why this was being done is a lot of these individuals were there illegally. So they were not worried. A lot of them did not want to report these crimes. But in the coming indictments, there were several that didn't report these crimes, man. And I think it's kind of fascinating that, from my era to now, how much the Nortenos have evolved in the sophistication of their activities now. They're not just street gang members. They're actually conducting criminal-like enterprises, like illicit activities on behalf of like the big homies. You're going to have to assume that these individuals probably are plugged in with somebody in the feds. How did they get out to Dodge City? I don't know. It's all you got to do is look at the back history of a lot of these gangs in different areas. People from out there in Tulare County have moved out to certain areas out of state. People out there in Monterey County, and what ends up happening is they end up setting up shop. They either have kids, they raise their kids with that Norte life. They start to meet kids in school, and it's that whole identity they take on that role of identity of being a Norteño. And see, before you would hear like rumors of out of state, and you sometimes meet one, right? And they weren't with the functions yet. Like what I mean by that is they weren't up to par. Now the way things are with social media contacts and so forth, like they have rappers out there in these areas, and they're communicating. So everybody is almost there's almost a branch of union. And what I mean by a branch of union, if anybody knows the bonds and whatnot, means that bond number 9 discusses having a branch of union with all set procedures. And what that means is work parallel with all pintas. Well, now they're working parallel with all other counties and states where they're on the same branch of union of what's expected of them. So they have to have individuals that are out there that are having influence. I think in the last 15 years, you've had more homeboys who decided to move out of state, right? And with that wasn't always the intentions of just getting a job and stepping away from the life. With that comes the chance of recruiting and finding like-minded individuals So say you got some homeboy that moved from San Jose, another homeboy that moved from fucking Tulare County, Salinas. They move into a similar city. They have kids. Next thing you know, there's about 10, 12 of them. They go to school. They start recruiting them. Now you got a whole little subset, you know. And the fact that this city of a population of 27,000 had two gangs that were under the Norteno umbrella was kind of shocking to me. You know, the Sureños had two of them, but that doesn't really surprise me. Because sometimes you have these Sureño hoods that they're not even, some out of state, sometimes they're not even under anybody's umbrella. They just create this gang and it's stuck. Now, they do the same thing. They got individuals who move out of state and set up shop and, you know, whether they intentionally do it or not, that's neither here nor there. It just happens, you know, and then therefore then you have these homegrown barrios, these homegrown hoods that now you have people who were born in these cities that are coming from these cities, but they're banging Norte or Sur, you know. In this Dodge City, Norteño gangs, they were pretty damn active. I mean, they had 23 members indicted, you know, as far back as like 9 years ago. And they continue to have people indicted. And see, so once you have established some type of foothold in any type of location, it's kind of hard for you to get rid of that. You know what I'm saying? You have to get rid of it early. You know, any law enforcement that has like a new gang that just all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, you know what I'm saying? If it catches fire and it spreads, you're not going to be able to stop it. It's going to continue to grow. And that's exactly what we're seeing in a lot of these out of states, like Washington, Yakima. There's no way that the Nortenos will ever be deleted from that area. You know what I'm saying? Other locations. Now, Wichita looks like they got a strong little base. Nampa, Idaho, they got a strong base of Nortenos. So all these cities have now been restructured. And now, like I said, they've laid their flag down. They planted it. Now they're there to exist. And there's nothing that any of these cities or state, local law enforcement can really do about it unless they continue to indict, you know. And there's only so much resources, man. I mean, as much power and money as the feds have, they can't apply all the pressure in every single angle where there's gang activity. It's just not going to happen, you know. And so I looked at the long list of these cases, man, and like I said, they were actually the second case in history to ever be indicted under a RICO case in Wichita. I'm not Wichita, in Dodge City. You know, you expect it sometimes in the bigger cities, but I think what happens, man, I think it's easier for hoods that are out of state to go into smaller areas that maybe have 20,000, 50,000 people, but have a huge Hispanic population. It's easier for them to plant their flag and then, you know, let it take root, you know. Now, with that, now you got basically 4 fucking hoods that are out there. Like I said, you know, Diablos Viejos and Los Carnales Chingones. Those are 2 hoods out there. And they were working parallel. And the magnitude in which they were operating, man, from reading these court records, like I said, these are court records. There's always going to be some discrepancies to the truth. But there's also going to be some truth in these statements that you also hear as well. There has to be a little bit, something that would add up to what they're trying to imply. They were collecting fees. They were having meetings. And they were talking about removing oppositions. They were talking about, you know, connects to rob or extort. So they already had that mentality, man, already, that this is a criminal enterprise, that this is under a criminal enterprise, and that they are the foot soldiers, which is the truth of it. And see, we didn't have that when I was growing up. Like this is what shocks me. Like I'm right there, basically fucking one of the strongest hubs of Norteños, period. You know what I'm saying? And we were still not being influenced back then as far as what we had to do and the level of involvement in street activities. You know what I'm saying? We were just out there gangbanging. This new wave of gang membership that's occurring, and I hear rumblings as well, is that they're more in tune to follow under the big homies' guidance. You know, contributing money from the hood, you know, being involved in doing this and whatever activities that they're required to do or asked to do. And, you know, now this is widespread, you know, and from my understanding, you know, there's already been at least I think 2 carnales that have been pulled from out of state, man. One from Nevada, one from Washington. There could be more. You know what I'm saying? But before, you really didn't have anybody that was from out of state that were carnales. Now, since they've hit the federal system, I know of at least 2. You know what I'm saying? One from Nevada, like I said, and one from Washington. There may be more nowadays. I don't know. But I've also seen certain things, like as far as rosters that were at certain locations and stuff. And the interesting thing is, You'll see places like Kansas, Texas, all these cities that never before, you know what I'm saying, you really never heard that they were homeboys, but I'll see them on a household roster. As well as I'll see them on BNLs. You know what I'm saying? I have a BNL from the feds. And I just think it's kind of interesting how much change has happened just this fast. You know what I mean? They've been probably in the federal system since 2005. Skip's been there a little bit longer, but and so has Mad Dog. But all the rest of them, they must have hit the system probably out, like I said, around 2004, 2005. So 17 years later, you know what I'm saying? But within 7 years, you were already seeing splurges of different Norteno subsets that were being built, you know? And with that comes what? Violence, drugs, you know? Wherever there's a need to fulfill the I'm not going to call it the underground world, but to fulfill the criminal lifestyles, needs, and necessities, like drugs, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have gangs that are going to be there that want to take a piece of that pie. And so it doesn't surprise me because there's so many cities that have been untainted and untouched by the California street gangs that now they're starting to make their moves. And so I'm thinking in my head, besides having conflict with Sureños, some of these areas, right, they have other gangs such as Vice Lords and Disciples and, you know, Kings. How is that going to translate? Is that going to create more conflict? Is there going to be more wars? You know, because these gangs have been traditionally strong in the Midwest. You know what I mean? Or, you know, back east or Northwest and whatnot. They've been running operations for a long time. So how is this going to translate out there? You know, is there going to be more alliances with certain groups? You know, how is this going to work? Because, you know, like you have the folks and peoples, right? They kind of align, right? What's going to happen with the Nortenos and Sureños? Are they going to be their own independent entity as far as they don't fall under no assistance from nobody? Or are they going to decide to make allies? You get what I'm saying? Like, you can sit there and take, all it really takes, man, and this is something that people need to realize, all it takes is about 5 people who have education, who have the resources and have all this stuff and have the knowledge to go into basically any area and establish a fucking regiment. You know what I'm saying? To be involved in what the activities are out there. You know what I'm saying? You can do this almost anywhere. You can do it with 3 basically, but I'd say at least 5 if you're building something in an area that's fucking fresh and new, because you need as much available assets and resources as you can, you know? You know, that's why, you know, there's some things that are unbeknown to even us or to even law enforcement. Like, you know, there's crews that are out there that operate at times that are maybe only just 3 members. And they could be out of state. They could be even down south. And you're not going to know that they're operating, but they're wiggling a whole different way. And they have a whole different agenda, which is not to reveal their identities. You know, the level of the way these organizations work, you know what I'm saying, especially the NF, is on a sophisticated level, on a very secretive, clandestine type of agenda. You know, so what ends up happening is once those little groups who have been created start to splurge in numbers, that's when all the attention happens. That's why it's always better to have a smaller crew, you know what I'm saying, when you're establishing that regiment. Then let things take off from there. And so I'm really kind of curious if anybody knows how they got to Dodge City, you know, because I don't think that this just happened, you know, overnight. I think there would have had to been some families that moved out there. I've never, ever heard of personally never heard of the NF trying to establish Norteño hoods in certain locations out of state just to have a pipeline. I would believe that they probably have thought about that. Maybe they have done that. I don't know. But usually these things happen that they're not done on purpose. You know what I'm saying? They just happen. And, you know, out there in this country, there's a whole, like I said, a whole lot of different resources out there that have been untapped into different areas and locations. And with the level of criminal thinking that a lot of these individuals have from all these groups, they're going to try to bring that into those areas because it's more of a financial benefit to them to do so. You know what I'm saying? Think about it. Drugs are going to go for a lot more in Kansas City than there are going to be in California. You know what I'm saying? You can make loot. You can make it worth your time. You know? But I think it was kind of interesting how they were extorting some of the Guatemalans there. I thought that was kind of a trip because that's not really the only time that would be recognized as is if they were infringing on their territory. And so the Nortenos felt that they had to set an example Like, say you want to do business out here, you're gonna have to pay us. This is our territory. I can see that. Now it also says that they were tied into some people across the border as well. You know what I'm saying? And some of these indictment charges. I read several different cases, man. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but all it just proved to me is that they were extremely active. You know, and these out-of-state law enforcement communities, they still don't know what to do. They have no knowledge of how these Nortenos operate. So when this stuff occurs, it's all shocking to them. You know, it's taking them by surprise, and they don't know how to combat it or fight it. Like I said, you know, you're having murders, you're having fucking extortion, you're having drug trafficking. And, you know, I did a video in the past about an established Norteno hood in fucking Canada. Canada, of all places. Can you believe that? So, you know, the Sureños, they're pretty much almost worldwide nowadays. You know what I'm saying? And I never thought the Norteños were going to, you know, take heed to expanding. But they've actually caught fire. You know what I mean? And they're spreading like wildfires, man. Like wildflowers. They're spreading everywhere. You know, it's not uncommon to go into any type of state. You may run into a neighborhood eventually where you're going to start seeing XIV 14 Norte. You know, whereas before I would have never thought that was even possible. So sometimes the feds, the FBI, you know, sometimes they make choices and don't think ahead. They have no foresight. You know, like, look at what's going on now. Since they sent everybody to the feds, Operation Black Widow, you've had a spurge of new gangs that are catching heat everywhere, right? Since the state started to indict people more over to Mexico. Where do you have it now? You have Nortenos in Mexico, but not only that, they're in contact with people on the United States side of the border. What's going to happen there is the same thing that happened with MS-13 and 18th Street when they got fucking deported to fucking El Salvador and all those countries, man. These gangs are going to eventually take heat out of state and out of the country. And then, therefore, you're going to have a way bigger problem on their hands. Like I said, the feds don't always think things through, man. Right now, they got a whole clusterfuck, a situation that they can't even control, even if they tried. Anyways, quick spill, like I said, Dodge City, Nortenos, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy, man. I never thought that this would ever happen, man. You know, I've heard about Sureños being out of state, man. And, you know, a lot of times when I've seen Sureños from out of state, I don't look at them as the ones like from California. They're a little bit different. No disrespect, man, but they don't remind me of like real Sureños. You know what I'm saying? And I don't say that in a disrespectful fashion. I just say that me being real. You know, I don't know how I'm going to feel about if I see Nortenos from out of state in certain areas, which I have. I've seen some out here in New Mexico. You know what I'm saying? Even in Arizona when I go through there. But like I said, man, the vibe feels different. You know what I'm saying? I've watched a couple of channels of people from out of state that are supposed to be this and that, and they just don't have that same stilo. They don't have that same concept. They don't have any of the you know what I'm saying, the force, the insight of what these groups represent. So it's kind of a trip, man. So anyways, just my opinion. You know, boy, Flacco, Convict's Perspective, I'm out.